Welcome to the Spiritable podcast. My name is Luke.
I'm Richard, and I just got my master's degree in divinity.
Everyone has a different perspective, so we're bringing on all sorts of people from different walks of life, like Jewish, Buddhist, Christian, atheist, and more, to discuss the biggest spiritual and moral questions and how they see it in their philosophy.
Our goal is to find where we agree and disagree, and hopefully challenge ourselves to be better people in the process.
Together, we shall dive deeper and get weirder.
But this week we're having on Eben Alexander. He's a neurosurgeon.
Dr. Eben Alexander.
Dr. Eben Alexander.
The
The third, true. He's a neurosurgeon and author who, after having a near-death experience, experienced the afterlife and wrote a book called Proof of Heaven.
And
He's
other
written
books.
Two other books after that.
Yeah, we're going to try to get into some reincarnation because he's big into that. He has this thing about the infinite consciousness, a whole lot of myriad of concepts that we want to delve into.
Okay, well, I usually pretty much answer everything.
All right. Hey, that honesty is good. Yeah, we just had Raymond Moody on last time, and he was very, just the most humble man. I don't know if you've ever talked to him or met him before.
Yeah, we present with him many times. He's a very close friend. He is an absolute angel.
Isn't he a sweetheart? He's just the most wholesome man I've ever met in my life. I was like, man, if I'm that by time I'm 75, I'll be doing well.
Yeah, we love Raymond and Cheryl, his wife.
Oh, nice.
They are just wonderful, wonderful souls. I mean, there's a reason why somebody like that is the one who kind of got this whole revolution started by, coining the term near-death experiences back in 1975.
Yeah.
He's the right soul to kick it off.
Yeah, he is indeed. Well, speaking of kicking things off, we'll kick things off here. So, to start out, what is one bad habit that you are trying to break right now?
Multitasking, or trying to pretend that I can multitask.
Oh, I am the exact same way.
Yeah. That's one thing I'm trying to get rid of.
Richard, are you good at multitasking at all?
No, I'm terrible.
terrible. There was one very vivid time where I was getting ready for bed, and I was like, okay, I got to brush my teeth, use the bathroom, take a shower, and I was like, I can do all these things at once, and ended up having the worst, not to get too gritty, but having the worst possible combination where I was brushing my teeth on the toilet with the hot water running, and I was trapped. I couldn't go anywhere. It was the worst possible thing.
Yeah, better to focus on one thing.
So then a question we like to ask all of our guests is, what is your best or worst spiritual experience?
And we can take a good guess as to what your best was based off your predominant work, but maybe you have a particular case where you had a terrible spiritual experience.
Well, no, I don't believe from my point of view, there is no such thing as a terrible spiritual experience. I think you can have spiritual experiences that, might appear frightening, foreboding, kind of haunting, all that kind of stuff. But from my point of view, they are always positive, and they're always kind of your higher soul participating in soul growth in a positive direction.
Well, maybe to steer away from more of the nightmarish aspect, more of the disenfranchised or disconnected. Like, what was the height of your disconnection with spirituality?
Oh, well, I went through a dark night of the soul before my coma for 8 years. Again, that's something I go into in Proof of Heaven, but the reality is I was adopted. I looked for my birth mother when I was younger. North Carolina had very strict laws to prevent any kind of reunion. The children's home told me she wasn't looking for me, so forget about her. So I did. That was from my mid-20s on. But then in the year 2000, my older son, Eben the Fourth, who was in sixth grade at the time in Massachusetts, was doing a school project in family genealogy. And part of that project was I needed to find out more about our birth family, our genetic history.
Right.
And that time, so I wrote to the children's home again, expecting to get the same answer I'd always received before. No, your birth mother's not out there. Well, no, that's not the answer I got. In February of 2000, I got a very different answer. And in a 2-minute phone call with a social worker while driving through a blizzard, going up to go skiing with my older son in Maine, the social worker told me that my birth parents had actually gotten married.
Oh, wow.
I cannot tell you what a shocker that was. And not only that, they'd had 3 children.
Oh, my goodness.
But in that in that 2-minute phone call, I found out that my youngest sister of those 3 children had passed over in 1998.
Wow.
They were still grieving her loss. So it was not a good time to come back in her life, back in their lives. And that 2-minute phone call sent me into a tailspin. I didn't recognize it for months, but I stopped taking my sons to church. I stopped saying prayers with them at night. I basically gave up on any belief in a loving personal God and power of prayer and heaven. And that's how I spent the next 8 years up until my coma.
Wow.
Now, it turns out that a year before my coma, in 2007, as I tell in Proof of Heaven, that's when I finally met my birth family. And it's because my sisters, my adopted sisters, walking on a beach in South Carolina after those 7 years of kind of dark night of the soul, they said, don't you think it's time you reached out to your birth family again?
That's powerful.
And my first thought was not, because I realized that it had kicked me over the edge of the abyss back in February 2000, that perceived rejection. But I realized they were right. There was such a hole in my soul. I had to at least try again. And that's when I wrote another letter in August of 2007. And by October 5th, 2007, I was walking down a sidewalk in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and met for the first time in 54 years my birth mother. And minutes later, hugged my birth father. I cannot tell you what an absolutely joyous set of events that was.
Yeah, kind of from
and
darkness
all that
to
had
light.
to happen. If you read Proof of Heaven carefully or watch any of my presentations, all that basically kind of had to happen before my NDE could happen in the fashion it did. And so that was my dark night of the soul, and it was a very dark one indeed, but I am convinced that we all need, from my point of view, true open-minded skepticism is a gift. It's a very important facet that strengthens our faith. Now, I don't want you to confuse when I say open-minded skepticism with a lot of the kind of scientists, materialist scientists out in the world who are pseudo skeptics. They basically have already made up their mind. They don't care one bit about the empirical data. They could care less about theoretical models. They just know that things like near-death experiences are woo-woo nonsense because they've never had one. No, we're not talking about pseudo-skeptics. You could care less about them. But true open-minded skepticism, I was my own worst skeptic.
Yeah. Well, that's something we've talked a lot about on the podcast before is, and part of our religion is wanting to rigorously question our own beliefs and also constantly be willing to change ourselves for what's better, for ideas or values or philosophies that are better and going to help us lead happier lives. And so that's something I'm very thankful for. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's really no way that, a strong, profound spiritual awakening and awareness can occur without questioning it.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so important that people question it, but also beware. Our society is absolutely chock full of falsely limiting beliefs about our capabilities and also completely erroneous notions about, the material world and mind and their relationship and all that.
Right.
So there's tremendous room for growth, but it's very important to question things and to rely on personal experience. But so important in this modern revolution of the nature of consciousness is to actually explore consciousness. And not just think, well, I'm going to read books about it.
So you had, for people who don't know, who are listening or watching, who don't know, so you had a very severe case of meningitis that quickly, after like 3 hours, threw you into a coma. And then you were in a coma for multiple days, and
7 days,
7 days, and had this near-death experience that opened your mind to a sort of universal consciousness, or infinite consciousness, I think, as you put it, and had this whole experience and came back and slowly regained memories and thoughts and affections and feelings, and then had this massive spiritual experience that changed your life. So, with the rigorously questioning your own beliefs or open-minded skepticism, was there a part of you when you did return to the present that didn't believe yourself? Like, I imagine it must have been hard with the medical and scientific community saying, "Oh, Eben's hallucinating." For you to be like, "Oh, maybe I was hallucinating," because I know that's where my mind would have to battle there with this very real spiritual experience, but then this other side that's like, "Oh, maybe you are making things up." Like, how is that for you?
Well, important to point several things out. First of all, this meningitis was not a little baby case of meningitis.
No.
This was a killer. This absolutely should have wiped me out. There's a medical case report by 3 physicians who were fascinated by my kind of inexplicable recovery.
Yeah, your neocortex was wiped.
It was wiped. It was, and it was so wiped that when I woke up in that ICU room, surrounded by my sons, my sisters, my mother, my former spouse, I had no idea who these beings were. I mean, I had a complete deletion of Eben Alexander's knowledge, all my neurosurgical knowledge, my religious beliefs, all my personal episodes of life were erased, gone, deep within coma. And they were not back when I first came back to this world. All I knew was where I had just been, that extraordinary spiritual experience that I explained in Proof of Heaven, and that the case report that came out in Journal of Nervous and Mental Diseases in 2018, and that case report is accessible for anybody on my website, ebenalexander.com. Go to the blog postings from September 2018. You can get right to it in the 3rd paragraph. There's a link to the medical case report. But the reality is, I had none of my neurosurgical knowledge when I came back, no knowledge at all of brain, mind, consciousness. And so when I tried to explain to my doctors what had happened, they would just pat me on the back and say, well, your brain was covered with pus. We have no idea how you're even coming back to us. But you can forget about it because the dying brain plays all kinds of tricks. So I said, okay, my doctors know what they're talking about. The dying brain plays all kinds of tricks. Okay. And as I told my older son, who was majoring in neuroscience at the time, when he came home from school a day after I got out of the hospital, right before Thanksgiving in 2008, I told him it was way too real to be real. Mm-hmm. To me, it had to be a vast hallucination, extraordinary hallucination, just because it was so stunning. It was far more than any kind of reality I've ever experienced in this world. I mean, this is a dim, little murky, dreamlike world compared to that world. It was way too real to be real. So I was, but then I had to go through months of a process with my memories returning, all my neuroscientific knowledge coming back. And I was also going back to the hospital, talking with my doctors, going through my scans and medical records, neurologic exams, trying to make sense of it, because the medical records I was reviewing were of somebody who would go on to die. They were certainly not of anybody who came back to a full recovery. Right. And to me, that was a gigantic mystery, just like it was to the 3 physicians who wrote up my case report. But it's, this is kind of the gift of an experience like this, because it shows us the reality of our conscious awareness not being created by the physical brain at all, but in fact being more limited by the physical brain. We're far more than just living, in this little body, birth to death, nothing more.
Right. So it wasn't too difficult for you to find that sort of true reality in the scenario, and like get over the question of, does this really happen? No, of course it did, and I've changed because of it. So it sounds like you got there pretty quickly.
Well, a big part of it, if I'd been a truck driver, I could have had this experience. My doctors could have told me the dying brain plays all kinds of tricks. And I would have just gone through my life going, oh my God, what an incredible experience. And it still would have helped me over the long run, but I would not have had the advantage
have gone farther,
of a neurosurgeon who gets to have the experience and then go back and look at all these medical records and talk it over with the doctors and realize, my God, I had a recovery that has no explanation in Western medicine at all. Right. And I've got to make sense of it. And also the fact that, for example, all my memories came back and very detailed conversations with family and friends well after my coma revealed that my memories at that point were more complete and detailed than they had been before coma. And I knew that because of similar conversations with people before and after.
Yeah.
And that's something we discussed, in our newest book, this one, is memories are not stored in the brain at all. I mean, it's the last nail in the coffin of materialist neuroscience.
So are you saying that's a new book that you just published, or?
Well, it came out in 2017, but it's our most current book. This is the one that was written with my life partner, Karen Newell. This is the true proof of
living
heaven.
in a mindful universe.
The book Proof of Heaven. Book Proof of Heaven is a question mark. It's like, oh my God, these things are real, but how can they be from a scientific perspective? Living in a Mindful Universe is getting at the science and uniting the science and spirituality.
You mentioned like if you were a truck driver, it would have helped you in long haul, but not to the same extent. And
long haul, that's a good joke there.
Nice.
We see what you did.
And so I'm just curious as to what ways you feel like you've changed. And obviously it's been pretty impactful for you, and it's been a career change for you, writing books and giving talks about what happened to you and things like that. But I guess I'm interested in what the kind of worldview shift you had was. Where was your worldview about metaphysics, spiritual things beforehand, and kind of where has it landed you afterward, and how does that affect your day to day?
Well, that's a beautiful question. Basically, it's changed everything. I had to go back to square one and question everything I ever thought I knew about the nature of reality and start all over. And the important thing to point out, many people think that modern science conflicts with the existence of these kind of experiences. But no, in fact, modern quantum physics, especially in the setting of neuroscience and parapsychology and all the evidence for non-local consciousness and philosophy of mind, not only allows for the reality of the spiritual realms, it demands it. You know, when you hear physicists talking about infinite parallel universes as their best explanation for the findings of quantum physics, what they're failing to admit is primacy of consciousness, primordial mind. A philosophical position called objective idealism actually demands that these kind of capabilities be out there in the universe, and that we can be far grander beings than just stuck here in these little material bodies, because they can't even close the loop of causality within one physical universe, and all because they're trying to eliminate consciousness from the discussion.
Right. Well, I definitely want to delve into the mixture of science and spirituality and proof thereof. But before we get too meta, I want to keep us grounded. And along Richard's question, how has your life changed? I'm curious if your spiritual practices, your day-to-day like actual practices, feel almost less less sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Less fulfilling, I guess, than they did before.
No, absolutely not.
Because you experience the actuality of it, being back in this earthly body, doesn't feel less ingenuous, kind of.
No, because one thing is I realize this is where our souls actually get the work done in these lives, and with a full-blown knowing from the position of our higher soul that our little ego mind in these physical bodies is not aware of all of that grander aspect of it. That's why the NDE can be such a gift, because in this lifetime, it shows that to you. Now, the other part of this that is undeniable is the very profound role of reincarnation's a buzzword, but the fact of the matter is the science investigating all these experiences and also transpersonal psychology, et cetera, absolutely insists that our souls come back again and again and again in this process of progressive growth and refinement and evolution.
Right.
So you cannot dismiss all the scientific evidence supportive of reincarnation, but it just gives us a much bigger kind of version of mind and self and what we're doing in these lives. And for me, the change has been profound, and it's much more of seeing, for example, the importance of how I make choices in this life, because I realize I'm responsible for every choice and action I make. There's no escaping that. There's a tremendous sense of karma and justice in the universe. The life review that is so described in near-death experiences, your life flashing before your eyes. I mean, this is not a New Age concept. It goes back more than 2,400 years to the writings of Plato about the Armenian soldier killed in battle, who then woke up right before they lit the funeral pyre. And his story would fit in with any NDE case reported
these are
today.
Not new things.
He said, when you die, you go through a review of your life, all the important features of it, and the most important thing is how much love you have managed to share with the world. That coming from an Armenian soldier at the end of a tremendous battle.
Yeah, so I'd love to know how that showed up for you after having this massive experience. How did your kind of personality change? The way you interact with people, the way you shop in a grocery store, answer a phone call. Like, how did that shift for you?
I mean, for one thing, I must say I've come back realizing every soul is crucial in this.
Yeah.
So I could never possibly look at, somebody beside me in a Starbucks line or sitting beside me on an airplane or, going, seeing a homeless person on the streets and giving them some money, what have you. I can never look at any of those other souls involved here without seeing their far grander aspects. In fact, I remember early on, I would commonly, in just my daily conversations with people, whether I just met them or known them for my whole life, I would just have this beautiful sense where I, in one way, would kind of see them as a young child, in other ways would see them as a very old person right before death, but I could just see all the beauty of what is in each and every soul in this life, here to learn, here to grow, here to teach. That's what we're all here to do. And in fact, I believe the entire universe exists for the sole purpose of supporting sentient beings in their kind of relationships and process of discovery. And ultimately for humankind at this point in time, the big lesson we are charged to learn over these current millennia is a lesson of love and oneness and connection. And so this is all something that to me was very apparent in my everyday dealings, and in the way I see everybody. And I came to see, people who before I might have seen as my enemy or my nemesis as actually a near and dear member of my soul group. And that they only seem to be kind of conflicting because, in fact, we were trying to teach each other very crucial soul lessons. Many people. Sorry?
It's so fascinating. So much of the stuff that I hear you say fits so closely with my worldview, even to interesting little details like seeing a person as a child is something that Swedenborgian thought says, like an angel at a distance will often look like a young person, and the most perfect angels will look like little children from a distance, because it's reflective of how innocent they are and things like that. And it's so strange that I see my worldview as distinct from yours in the realm of reincarnation, and yet there's so much similarity in the specific descriptors, which is just fascinating. But my question, the thing that I've always wondered with this idea of reincarnation, or you said it was kind of a buzzword, rebirth, as it were, is if we get to the point where we don't remember anything from our past life, except for maybe some fleeting moments as children and things like that. I guess my question is, what's the point?
Okay. Okay. Yes, let's get right into that. What is the point? And it turns out, for one thing, in case your audience is unaware, there's a tremendous scientific literature that suggests that there is a strong reality to this perception people have of prior lives. The work of Ian Stevenson and Jim Tucker at the University of Virginia over 6 decades, they've identified more than 2,500 cases of past life memories in children where the best explanation is of, quote, reincarnation. Given that it's such a buzzword for people, it's probably better to just say that we can have memories in this lifetime of experiences that our souls have had in prior lifetimes. There's a whole world of transpersonal psychology that has grown up over the last 6 or 7 decades through the work of people like Dr. Stan Grof, Dr. Michael Newton, Dr. Brian Weiss. And transpersonal psychology just admits that you can never fully explain the kind of psychological issues involved in somebody's lifetime, thinking that they're only living this incarnation. When you allow them to go through hypnotic regression, to address dreams and dreams that show past life memories, things like that, or spontaneous epiphanies that reflect some kind of a past life scenario, those observations and kind of data points can help somebody in dealing with the issues they're facing in this life. For example, I saw a recent paper from University of Virginia. And by the way, your listeners can go learn tons more about this at their website, uvadops.org. But I saw a recent paper. I didn't read the whole thing, so I'm sorry I can't give you full details on it. But it was from Jim Tucker and that group at UVA, and I'm sure it's right there on that website. But basically, it was looking at their whole database, specifically the issue of past lives that were of an opposite gender. And what they found was that there was a very high kind of correlation of people who had kind of opposite gender thinking or behavior in this life if a recent incarnation was of the opposite gender. And it was really kind of stunning. But in other words, we can use this kind of information to help explain things going on in this life, in people living these lives, by realizing that we've all been here before. And it's, don't be afraid of the notion of reincarnation. So many people are.
So a couple perhaps ignorant questions then. So what's sort of the point of spirituality if we just finish this life and have a next life coming?
It's growth. We are in the process of growing. So in other words, to make an example of this, a litmus test for how advanced the soul is in this process of progressive incarnations towards oneness with the divine, because ultimately that is the goal. And a litmus test would be how self-centered somebody is. If somebody is very greedy and selfish and just only pay attention to their own good and could care less about anybody else, that's a very, very young soul. Somebody like Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, a very advanced soul who's giving their own soul. I mean, Martin Luther King knew that his demise was coming. There were several things he said that showed he knew he was not going to be there. Even his speech about going to the mountaintop, right. He knew he was going to be going on. He was going to be transitioning out of this world. He was a very advanced soul.
So does that only apply personally, or does that apply societally as well? Like, could we say that this generation of human beings living right now is more advanced and has grown more as people than we did 400 years ago?
Well, just like human beings can go through fits and starts in their growth and a few steps forward, a few steps back, humanity and sentience on this planet can do the same thing. But the general progression is one of growth and of coming to a much higher realization of oneness of mind and that we're all bound together. That's really the lesson that humanity has been charged with for thousands of years, and we're kind of slowly learning it. The important thing to point out is for 5,000 years or so, the model has been one of various seekers, prophets, mystics who have seen the universe in its grand glory far beyond the material realm, like Swedenborg, a beautiful example, and told other people and shared all that. And of course, we have the Bible and the Quran and other religious documents that are supposed to kind of guide the way based on those prophets and mystics. But remember that a lot of those texts in scripture were not necessarily written by the people who had experienced it, but about them. And therefore, a lot gets lost in translation. So that model, and of course, other people would have spiritual experiences, and not just from reading religious books, but through prayer and epiphanies and all that. But then the game changed in the late 1960s. And so doctors started developing techniques for resuscitating cardiac arrest patients. So in the last 50 years plus, we've resuscitated tens of millions of souls who have been to the other side and then come back to tell the tale. And as much as you can never, ever use near-death experiences alone to explain what happens after you die, for the big picture, you have to look at consciousness writ large, and you have to look at all aspects of consciousness, like the reincarnation work. And that's what gives us the big picture.
So taking this thought process to its extent, could we say that humanity is kind of limited in our existence because if we grow so much that we do, like you say, unite with the divine, is then humanity kind of done growing and being, or is that an eternal process?
I don't know if, all I can say is we can only really say what we can see from this perspective. And from this perspective, it looks like that's the lesson to learn about the oneness, the binding force of love, how we're sharing that one mind. And we can all progress in this as all of civilization begins to take these lessons personally to heart, to treat all others in every interaction we have with love, kindness, compassion, respect, taking care of each other, of forgiveness. I mean, all of these qualities of kind of expressing the golden rule.
Yeah.
I mean, Karen and I like to say that the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, which is present in every single major belief system on earth for the last few thousand years, in many ways is the deep lesson we are here to learn, is that oneness. If I hurt someone else, I'm hurting myself. And I don't know where it all goes beyond that. All I'm saying is that this kind of identification with God and coming to see that infinitely loving God source that so many near-death experiencers have bathed in. They go. That's why they come back to this world and they have no fear of death, because they realize it's a tremendous transformation. It's a transcendence. It's not an end at all. In fact, it's an awakening when we're released from the physical body and brain. It's like being let out of prison.
But then we do get put back in the prison, right? Because if we...
but also I was able to go to the core realm and also witnessed in several of very profound visual extravaganzas of how reincarnation and life reviews work. I could not have my own life review because of the extraordinary feature of amnesia. You know, my NDE was unusual because I had amnesia as a feature. And early on in my recovery, I explained that amnesia as, as a neurosurgeon. Say, well, I know that my neocortex was coated in pus. I had full thickness destruction with swelling, beneath my neocortex into the white matter, all 8 lobes of my brain affected. So initially I said, well, I guess memories would disappear with all that, because I was still kind of defaulting to that notion of memories stored in the neocortex. But that's when over 2 months, when everything came back and the memories were even more complete, I realized, no, they weren't originally stored there at all. They were restored there when I came back to this world. But no, memory is not stored there at all.
Guys, welcome to our first sponsor.
Guys, welcome to our first
so
ad. Our first ad is for this place called Cheese Dogs. I go there all the time. Here's 2 facts about me. I don't like hot dogs that much. I can't eat wheat, so I can't have hot dog buns. Sounds like a place called Cheese Dogs would be garbage. I love it. I don't know how he makes them so good. This is my favorite one. It looks bad because it has no bun.
Dogs is also spelled like not like regular dogs. It's DAWGS.
The guy who runs it, Rick, is the most wonderful human being. He's got the strongest dog energy I've ever met. He also gave us
excited to sell you a cheese dog, and I just want to buy one all the time from him.
He also gave us this goofy poem to read that I'm pumped about.
Okay, I'll read it. You supply me with music.
Yeah, you are the voice actor. So.
True. Ready?
Wait, what music am I supplying?
Give me like a rock background. Sometimes you need a little crunch in your lunch or a quick bite to get you through the fight. A local site where it's done right, fast, and friendly is what you need, and satisfaction guaranteed. Cheese Dogs, home of the 2-foot challenge and the grilled ice cream sandwich, where happiness starts and the fun is in your bun. Located at 318 Bustleton Pike in Feasterville. Check them out on Facebook, Twitter, and at www.eatcheesedogs.com. Eat Cheese Dogs. Check it out. They're dope. Thank you, Rick.
Let's eat. So I guess with this idea of reincarnation, coming back to continue to learn lessons, you said like the advanced of how advanced a soul is, you can tell by how selfless they are, basically.
Right. Altruistic.
Yeah, altruistic. So then I guess there is an innate sense of altruism that we take with us, even though our specific memories are kind of reset for the most part when we come back. I guess I'm struggling with the idea of forgetting. Why do we forget if having those memories? Like, I don't remember who I was in a prior life, but if I had made great progress in a prior life, wouldn't it be nice to have those lessons with me to help me be better?
Well, the lessons are there.
You just don't remember them,
The lessons are there because you learn in that lifetime, and then you refine that learning in the life review. The life review is a very crucial concept. And then in the presence of kind of with your higher soul and your soul group, and with that infinitely loving God presence. The group plans next incarnations, and the next incarnation, from my point of view, will include various hardships. It's actually hardships that help us to grow in this lifetime. It's one of the reasons why we have programmed forgetting. Because if you came in here, Jim Tucker, who has interviewed many of those children, the past life memory cases, he will tell you, you need to harvest those memories before age 5 or 6, because after that, various processes tend to cover them over. But that whole world of transpersonal psychology that I mentioned to you a while ago, which has involved hundreds of thousands of patients treated over the last 6 decades, involves recovering the memories. So they can be recovered. The memories of past lives and between lives can be recovered through hypnotic regression, through various dream practices. I use meditation. I use sacred acoustics. And anybody who wants to learn more about that very powerful tool can go to sacredacoustics.com. But Sacred Acoustics uses binaural beats to influence the lower brainstem, which is an extremely powerful way of liberating conscious awareness in this physical body. It's something we talk about a lot in Living in a Mindful Universe. But the past lives, it's meant to be suppressed. And that is because we have more buy-in, more skin in the game here when those memories are suppressed the way they are. But
it doesn't mean you didn't learn
that's
from them.
Kind of the original formula. But now with near-death experiences, with meditation, centering prayer, with transpersonal psychology, these are all ways of kind of reversing that program forgetting, accessing some of those memories from past lives, and then starting to make far more sense of it. And really, that's what I think is enabling all of humanity to wake up now, is this kind of broader vision of who we are.
I guess if we're supposed to have programmed forgetting, then what's different now that we should be trying to remember those things? If we only have skin in the game when we're programmed to forget, so we deal with the hardships like they're new.
I think it's just like we're born with predispositions and certain ways that we have evolved over time. So like you might be more capable of handling the difficulties of life because of things you've experienced in your past life. Like you don't need those specific memories, but the way you're automatically going to react to them has been shaped by what's happened to you, quote unquote, before.
No,
so it's not
yeah,
like you need
yeah.
that specific.
I get that. I guess my question is, it sounded like you were saying it is useful for us to forget the things that we feel like we have more skin in the game, but then also it's useful to get those memories back so that we have a higher enlightenment about it.
We have the skin in the game, but, with the kind of emotional engagement, and that's a very important thing. But the reality is it's, from my point of view, it's a way of kind of adjusting kind of karma or justice. So in other words, there can be things that we do in a certain lifetime that take us away from this kind of model of love and kindness and compassion. And we will often re-encounter that in the life review. And especially, say, if someone has been busy handing out a lot of pain and suffering to others, they're going to have to encounter that in the life review. And any things that do not get resolved in that life review might be repackaged as a challenge in the next life.
I like the concept of a life review.
Well, in other words, these are events and situations that allow us to grow. But I think the most important lesson I gained in many ways was that realization that the things that appear as hardships to the me who is kind of buying in with the emotional engagement in this lifetime, that often those are the stepping stones that will allow me to grow further. So it's how I choose to kind of interact with those hardships. Say, for example, a child who dies at an early age. How am I to deal with that horrific challenge in my life? Right. And what I've found is that by recovering this sense of connection, often being open-minded enough, for example, so that I can re-experience communication with that child after they have died and left the physical world, can be a beautiful teacher of the grander aspects of connections and relationships that we have and how we're truly bound together through love, and to leave behind that myth that our existence is dependent on a physical body. And so, in other words, the hardships often give us the answers and lead to the growth. But if we don't face up to that hardship, the right way, we might have to face it in a next lifetime.
Right.
That's why it's important for us to open up and grow through all of this. And my point would simply be that the knowledge gained from just knowing about NDEs can be plenty for any sentient being without necessitating an NDE to come to know much more about these bigger picture aspects of their connection, meaning, and purpose in the universe. So this is, all of us are here in this growth process together.
It sounds like a healthy relationship between sort of the macro and the micro, the big picture, infinite consciousness going on, and what we can do to better ourselves and better the world around us. Sorry, go ahead.
I often like to point out that Pierre Teilhard de Chardin wrote a beautiful book called The Phenomenon of Man in the mid-20th century.
Phenomenon of Man.
He was a French Jesuit paleontologist and a Jesuit priest. So he had spiritual and he had scientific education. He wrote a beautiful book, and he took the notions of Darwinian evolution that were just beginning to kind of come together in the mid-20th century, and he expanded it tremendously to what he saw as evolution of all sentience throughout the universe. And what I would say to your point there is that, just like that old saying, all politics is local, all evolution of the universe is nothing more than individual sentient beings coming into a process of discovery and growth, learning and teaching with other souls as facets on the diamond of the one mind. So we're not separate from that God force. We're like facets on the surface of the gem. But we all work together with these different perspectives in terms of that growth of sentience itself, all of consciousness. And I believe that's the reason the whole universe exists.
That's what you're doing too, is putting forth those teachings and trying to be one of those teachers as well. And I want to be cognizant of your time here. I know we're running out, and I have a couple rapid-fired questions I just want to shoot at you real quick. One is a big rabbit hole, but I have to ask it because you said something. You said a group plans our incarnations, and I need to know what that means, because that threw me through a loop.
Well, what I would say is, it would be impossible. It's, the sound of one hand clapping, that's the same as one soul evolving. It doesn't happen. Just like modern physics is coming to realize there are no objects in the universe. There are only relationships.
Okay, so you're saying it's like the infinite consciousness deciding how it wants to reincarnate pieces.
And it can only do it in groups. I mean, there's no way that a soul meanders this course growth on its own. And likewise, the life review, as I said, is a beautiful example of how we're all in it together. There's no such thing as an individual soul, but we're all really in this growth.
So I guess this
I got to do my rapid fire.
Wait, I have a rapid fire.
Okay.
So this one consciousness that we are all facets of, is it perfect? Is it a higher form of conscience?
What it is what I saw in my journey is that our very conscious awareness, this self-awareness that is the deep mystery of consciousness, is that God force. And we are all one and united through the God force. And the God force is pure love and light. And it's not in competition with some evil forces of darkness, a devil, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What I saw was that the apparent forces of evil and darkness in this world and in the lower spiritual realms is nothing more than the lack of the light and love of that God
We're on
force.
board with that, yeah.
We can all bring
Big
that
time.
in.
Yeah.
We can all bring that light and love in and change this world. That's what humanity and sentient life is in the process of doing.
Okay, so my last rapid fire questions. One, do you feel like you have an unfair advantage on regeneration because of your experience?
I'm sorry, an unfair
on
advantage?
Regeneration, on being a regenerated sort of person because of your spiritual experience. You got a fast track to developing.
No, I mean, I would say yes. It's kind of it was part of my soul journey, and it's helped me to come to some understanding. But I think every sentient being contributes to this growth of knowledge. And one thing that Karen and I make a big deal of, because Karen has never had a near-death experience, and yet when I first met her in November 2011, I realized she had a very profound kind of spiritual, heart-resonant presence that just radiated that love. So I think that you don't have to have an NDE to know this. That's the most important fact. Meditation, centering, prayer, but then the important thing is not just going within to kind of glean this enhanced view of relationship and purpose, but to live it in these lives. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's the important stuff. And that's why our souls are chomping at the bit to get back in here, knowing full well that they'll be dumbed down, that program forgetting is very real. But they love to come into these lives and choose the various challenges and hardships, because living these lives is the real excitement of sentience. But again, I think what NDEs and other profound epiphanies show us is that all is well, that no matter what the hardship, when you have the proper view of your higher soul and its journey and what you're bringing to learn and teach with other souls in their own growth and sharing your growth, that it's all worthwhile, and that all those hardships and difficulties, when they lead us to recovering these very comforting lessons of oneness, connection, and coming from our true sense of purpose and our spiritual home, it's a very satisfying way to live and to grow and to know.
That sort of answers my next question, which was, what is Dr. Eben Alexander's toolkit to being a happy person, a better, good, healthy person? And I think you're touching on a lot of that stuff right there.
Well, it's really just interacting with other souls, all the family and friends, obviously, but so many people that I just meet in this world. And to me, the biggest gift from my sharing the proof of heaven story is not just getting this out to the world and kind of helping the world, but people then come back to me and they share their stories. And I've had thousands and thousands of people, scientists, engineers, truck drivers, grocery workers, unemployed, what have you. Every soul has a story, and they've shared so many beautiful stories with me that just affirm at every level what I'm building up in my mind about this nature of reality.
Nice. Richard, did you have any last questions?
I'm just thinking about. I love.
We only have a couple minutes left.
Yeah, I love your focus on connectedness and love that fits really well with the way I see things. I don't know if I have any other questions. I have a lot of thoughts, but we'll have
to have them on, because we need to explore more on reincarnation. And I really wanted to get into the what you've said before about science going on to be able to prove spirituality. I want to have a whole talk with you on that. So we'll need to have you back.
It is absolutely. It's not even an option to just be going with some material world only or one universe. That's why quantum physics, they can only say causality is closed in infinite parallel universe. Because they fail to admit the reality of consciousness.
I'm skeptical that science is going to be able to get there, but that's why we need to have you back on so we can talk about it more.
We can do that for sure. And what I would encourage is people can learn more at ebenalexander.com. For people who want strong meditative tools, go to sacredacoustics.com. Everything there is self-explanatory. You'll figure it out as you go. Listen through headphones, but those binaural beat tones of sacred acoustics influencing your lower brainstem can do a tremendous amount of good in helping to liberate your conscious awareness.
And Dr. Eben Alexander also has 3 books out, unless I'm missing one: Proof of Heaven, Map of Heaven, and Living in a Mindful Universe. What's could you say there's a best and a worst of those?
Well, I think, for one thing, especially in this era of COVID pandemic with all the death and all the bereavement and grief, Proof of Heaven is an absolute.
It's a must.
I can't tell you how good it is for that scenario. But I will tell you from the scientific aspect, Proof of Heaven is a beautiful story. But more and more the answers actually come together 5 years later when we publish this book, Living in a Mindful Universe, which does a world of good of bringing science and spirit together and showing the reality of our spiritual nature. I think in 5 to 10 years, no soul on earth will be doubting the reality that we are spiritual beings in a spiritual universe.
That's a big jump. We'll have to have you back on to talk about it.
It's already there. The information's already there. You just have to study it.
I want to let you go here, so everyone check out his website, check out his books. Dr. Eben Alexander, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's good talking with you. And yes, we could talk again soon.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much. Have a great one.
All right. Thanks a lot. You too. Bye-bye.
Whoa.
All right. I want to let's just try a new thing.
baby.
Let's just do a little group download. Like, how's that for everybody? Maybe this goes in the show, maybe it doesn't.
Dude, I am ready to like tackle someone. All my synapses are firing. I had to, I'm ready to.
It felt like what he was doing is being like, well, oof, I'm giving you the easy version of all the reasons that I buy into this stuff. And I don't, like, I'm not saying he even disagreed with any of it. It was just like everything he said was a whole ass rabbit hole. And I was like, ooh, what's going to go down?
Here's my takeaway. I think he was like entirely sitting comfortably inside my worldview, except that what I think he sees as reincarnation, I see as connections with spirits and angels. Boom.
Interesting.
Put it to bed.
But we didn't talk about an afterlife at all. Like he didn't talk about like you had mentioned angels and he said like, yeah. But I don't think in his worldview there are angels.
A question I didn't get to ask.
Tell me right now, I'm writing down.
After you die and you have your life in review, do you remember all your past lives at that point? If you lived like 80 lives and you goofed it in the same way every time, and then you die and here's your life in review and it's like, oh, you're kind of a selfish dick right there. And then you're like, ugh, again.
I guess the idea of reincarnation is that maybe you get better at some things, but there must be the same thing that you goof every time. Otherwise, like you would have. I was kind of confused about what he was saying, like where the breaking point of like ascension to the spirit consciousness. Like, is everyone always reincarnated? Do we have everybody on the planet now? Where do the new people come from?
Different things,
like but now mixed with like the Hindu idea of samsara, like exiting the reincarnation loop.
Yeah, I wondered if there was an exit to the loop at all.
Yeah. I opened up too many statements when I was just talking about the point I was trying to make was just that if you are being reincarnated, you must always, every time you die, have that exact experience. Where you're like, I don't think that's true. Screwed up so hard here in the same place I always do. I don't think
it would be the same thing at the same time because it's the same way of climbing up a mountain and you get to a point where you can see more things. Then you keep climbing and you can see more things. So it's like there are parts of myself that I'm working on right now, but that doesn't mean I only have one thing to work on. I might be able to solve something and then there's a whole host of other things.
But it must happen at least a handful of times.
You're just really searching for that one time the guy's like, and again, I stepped on a banana peel.
and it feels like I still never...
I screwed up.
And the whole infinite consciousness is just laughing at this guy who keeps slipping on a banana.
I still never felt like I got the idea of like, we have to forget so that we feel invested in the present. Like, okay, like I can see that as an explanation. Gets back to the whole freedom idea. Like if we were aware of our spiritual consciousness, it wouldn't be our choice to like really work through it. We'd be like, cool, done.
Yeah, there was a lot of like sorry, keep going.
But then why are we trying to remember that stuff? I'm confused. It feels like one or the other.
I don't think he was saying we are trying to remember it.
Well, the whole like listen to those sick sacred beats to try to get back past memories.
That was my question. Like, why
the binaural beats thing? The only other time I've ever heard that term is in association with iDosing, and I feel like I've mentioned that to you guys. Is the idea that came up in middle school that you could listen to binaural beats and get high on drugs, and so it just triggered my immediate laughter.
Well,
clearly,
he was calling them sacred acoustics, so we'll have to check out some of his sacred acoustics. Maybe we'll do a live listen.
Yeah, I wrote that. He referenced like a lot of things. So
I'm
slap
glad
those
you're
on
writing
the
them down
description.
because he had a bunch. So check out the description for more Eben stuff. One thing I wanted to ask him was why try to bring this stuff back? Like it's such a like his experience or that experience in general. Like why do we need that if it's such a rare thing to experience spirituality in that kind of way and experience the infinite consciousness? And it's clear that if that was something that was meant to be commonplace, lots of people would be having it, right? So why try to make something that's rare commonplace? You know? Like why try to speed that up himself through his own doing or people's own doing rather than just like, I don't know, let it be.
I don't know if I get your question.
Like he's so focused on trying to provide this experience for people or to get in contact with this. Like, why even bother with it?
Well, I guess if he saw that it was helpful for him, he thought it could be helpful for others.
Yeah, maybe.
My question is, if we are all part of a big cosmic entity, which I think in a certain sense we are, God, right? We're all connected to God.
Yeah.
And we
But
all,
I don't think unition with God is the absolution of our identity.
I totally agree. I think it is the whole idea of you can't love something that's not outside of yourself. So if everything is one thing, then it just is love. It's nothing. Right? Like God and we both need objects of our love that aren't us.
Yeah, we need to be able to express our love and feel it.
But just structurally, if there's only one cosmic intelligence and we are just kind of facets on it, and it is pure love itself, how did we goof? If we're just connected to it, why are we not pure love?
Right. Like what the progressive nature of that? Like how is this, and also how is this divine consciousness, infinite consciousness, is it improving itself as humanity improves?
See, he said it. That was the question I asked him. He said it was pure love itself. So it sounds like it's already perfect. It doesn't need improving.
And then what does it need us for?
We are just facets of it. Why are we not perfect?
And what did we start from? And how did that begin?
If you break it down, I feel like it makes the idea of a god or higher power much closer to something like a force of nature. Like it flows like water where it needs to be and how it works. It seems to be that if it's not conscious like a person, then I can't picture it in any other way than like a force, in the same way that gravity is a force. And there's therefore a scientifically measurable way to parse out what it is. And that's weird to me. And maybe that's a lot of leaps, but that's how I always feel when I hear the terminology. I'm like, okay, but then some rule dictates how it works, but we don't know what it is. That the only thing that resembles that is nature forces, not not a force of conscious.
I was thinking that. I was thinking that during the podcast as well. I think probably with Eben talking about it being like the prime consciousness, he was not giving it human characteristics, probably in the opposite direction. Like he saw human characteristics as limiting, and what we call a person is a person limited by natural things, and we are consciousness above that. So more of it's more a person, like you'd say a person apart from the physical, than less.
Guys, I want to keep talking, but I also want to eat a hot
I think
dog.
we should close out the show.
Well, do we want to close out the show? But we have to have the cheese dogs ad.
Yeah, we're just going to close it out.
Hey.
The cheese dogs ad probably going to go in the center.
Oh, okay.
So just close out the show now.
Good luck finding a point in the center.
Yeah, who knows?
Can you put a point in the center where I was trying to actively listen and respond back to him, but then I forgot what he said, and so I was just like, "Yes, it's good." All right, my next question.
I remember that.
I was like,
you really
my mind's blanked. My mind's blank.
You're doing good. This is a great closing to a show. Please close.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching, listening.
I live for the outros of this show. It's always you guys just don't give a crap by the end.
I apologize if I jumped in too much. I was like, man, this again,
That's it. That's over.
Hi, thanks for listening. If you like the show, here's some things you can do. If you're listening to the audio right now, you can go to YouTube to our Spiritable channel and check out the video there.
As always, please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, all that jazz. But the biggest thing you could probably do is tell your friends about the show, because word of mouth is really useful. And also, if you go on iTunes and leave us a review, it helps us out a lot and bumps us up in the algorithm. So that would be great if you could do that for us.